This week on Culture Leaders, I sat down with Jerry Golden, the chief policy officer at Lyft, whose work sits at the intersection of public policy, government affairs, and social impact. I recently read a book called Careless People, which is about the policy person at Facebook. And it is a fascinating world because you're basically trying to translate between policymakers who don't know much about technology and technology people who don't know much about policy. And Jerry really breaks it down in an interesting way. We talked about what it means to represent both drivers and riders at the same time, which that world is going through something interesting, and how Lyft is expanding globally for the first time. Very exciting. This conversation is super complex, but more than that, it is a conversation that is about connection and service. And I loved hearing Jerry talk about his why and the purpose that he experiences working at Lyft. So please welcome to the podcast, Jerry Golden. Jerry, thank you for joining us. Tell me, what is your why?
Well, first, thanks for having me, and thanks for a great start-off question. I think there are probably a few different things I'd love to answer with, but the one I feel probably most compelled by is the idea that my why is building teams that multiply their impact rather than add to it. It's something that's always been a big priority of mine in every role I've had, every leadership opportunity I've had throughout my life, but certainly at my career and in my time at Lyft. And what do I mean by that? Generally, it's just this idea of ensuring that we're not only refining each individual person on the team's skills. I can be somebody, for example, who might write a really good brief or have a really good conversation with a policymaker about something in the best interest of drivers, the best interest of riders, the communities that we serve. But it's difficult to scale that on its own. It's an awfully linear contribution to the success of the team and to the purpose that Lyft is seeking to achieve in the world around us. So when you do it the right way, I think when you cultivate a shared sense of responsibility, lifting each other's performance, rounding out each other's edges, working reciprocally as a team in the spirit of candor and support, you can get to a point where I think you find, and by the way, finding the right people and all of the right roles and how to get them to complement each other the right way, you can really exponentially expand your impact. And that's something that I get really passionate about.
Well, it's interesting because I think about your role in terms of expanding impact, and it's probably most complicated for you because you have so many factors to consider. I mean, you are at the center of all of these different and divergent stakeholders, probably, and trying to find the path that works best for all. So, I mean, tell me more about how you approach that and how if is it complicated? Does it come naturally to you? I mean, do you enjoy being in that complicated space?
Well, first, I wouldn't want it any other way. So when you ask about do I enjoy it, of course, I didn't join this field or this work because I would prefer to be bored than to be inspired and to be challenged. But at the same time, you have to enter with a sense of humility. To me, I think the skills I rely on the most often, day to day, are active listening, sort of not accepting the starting point premise if it doesn't feel quite right, kicking tires on things, and making sure I'm surrounded by people that I consider sort of smarter than me in each of the topics that we're working with. Because I think you can, over time, realize instead of always having to be the smartest person in the room, your skill becomes more how to connect the dots on the complicated issues you're working with and what's being brought to bear by those around you. And I think that's something that I especially get excited about in my work.
Well, and tell me about the macro environment that we're operating in now compared to a few years ago. Has connecting the dots become more challenging, less challenging? What is your experience in this transition we've gone through from just a very high level macro scale?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of each. I think in general, one thing that is constantly exciting for my team is that you have the ability to represent the growing company that you're working for that is taking its mission and taking its purpose to a broader reach of population, whether that's geographically or whether that's even just growth in each of the markets that we've long existed in. The world gets more complicated and the demands are often evolving. And I think for us, it's a matter of making sure we don't use yesterday's playbook for today and tomorrow. So we're constantly trying to understand what's most important to, well, I think of my job, by the way, I should be clear. I do sort of a mixture of my team does, my org does public policy, government affairs, social impact work. There's a nexus throughout these things, but they're essentially different things at the same time. And they complement each other in the sense that yesterday's issues take on new folds each and every day. We have a driver population that values their independence and their flexibility. Lots of times I go to driver conversations all the time, working for a company like Lyft, where you have opportunities to learn about what inspires them to drive and utilize our platform for that reason. And a lot of it really is the ability to say, hey, I have to watch the kids all day on Tuesday, or I have an aging parent or an unhealthy person in my life that I need to look out for, or I'm a full-time student, or I have a full-time job, or I'm between jobs. I'm just looking for the extra dollars between those spaces. Sometimes I want to work a full day or a full week, and sometimes I want to take off for the next month. This kind of work, I think, does a real service to people in those positions, and societally does a real service when people are looking for those transition jobs, supplemental jobs, and often more full income jobs, depending on what your calling is and what your needs are at the time. And then for riders, I'm a big believer that transportation is just an enormous unlock. Creating accessibility for people who either need to get from place to place. They might live in a transportation desert where they don't have quick access to, trains or buses, or to get to work and to get to groceries, to jobs, other things like that. Or they're fundamentally just seeking a better opportunity to connect with the world around them. One thing I can just share with you that has been really resonant for me in my time at Lyft is coming out of COVID. I think we encounter a world, and I look especially generationally sometimes, where the instinct to engage outside with the world around you isn't always at the same level it once was. We get buried in our phones, we look at our social media, we're online all the time at work and at home. And one of the things I think Lyft does, and our purpose of serving and connecting, is getting people out in the world to meet with the people that they need or value meeting with and experience the things that they love.
Well, that's what I remember. It's just an outsider with no expertise in the industry. That's what I remember when I first learned about Lyft. That was the differentiator, was that the drivers connect with the riders and they have conversations, and it was a much more interpersonal focus that Lyft took to the whole experience. It was about creating experiences and not just giving you a ride. And that seemed to be it's a cultural differentiator that you use to grab market share, I think. And that resonated with a lot of people in my life anyway. Because
Yeah, I
you're right,
appreciate you.
we do
Sorry.
that less.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that because it resonated with me. Like I can tell you, once upon a time, working for another employer, which I valued, I've one of those lucky people who's never worked for a place I didn't get a good experience with. But Lyft contacted me, and I think if it weren't a company where I already had a very positive brand affinity, and it's for reasons like that, it's a lot of sort of what I thought of the Lyft ethos and the values it represented from the outside. I was curious enough to explore whether it really felt that way from the inside, and I haven't looked back.
Yeah, that's interesting because brand and culture are very tied. And so your branding probably did come from the culture, or maybe the culture came from the brand. Which do you think came first at Lyft?
Oh, that's super interesting. I want to enter with some humility on that question because I love it. But I'm also only in my less than 2 year horizon at Lyft right now. I can tell you, I report up to our CEO, David Risher, who one of the first things he did when he became CEO was to shift the executive team's name to become the purpose driven team. The PDT is what we call it
Oh,
inside the
cool.
company. And I really think that things like that, I'm a big believer that words matter. They set sort of an ethos and a standard that you draw back upon, whether it's serve and connect, or customer obsession drives profitable growth, or that we're a purpose driven team. These are themes that you constantly come back to, and I think help drive your strategic decision making.
Well, I bet you're also learning something interesting where you are in the world, because right now you see unemployment is rising. It is harder and harder for college graduates to get a job. College graduate unemployment rates are already over 6%. And I think general US unemployment rates are going to get there next year. So, I mean, earlier you were talking about the different things that situations that drivers bring to reasons that they want to be drivers, right?
Sure.
It can be a side hustle, but one of my predictions for next year is that the side hustle is going to become the main dish. That like we will be forced to lean more heavily into our side hustles for economic reasons. Have you seen that in the data that you have around your drivers? Are you seeing more full-time drivers now than before?
I haven't seen it from a data standpoint. What I have seen is a very broad variety, a spectrum of drivers in our own engagements and conversations, and those that my peers in the company and my team's constantly having as well. I think different drivers are compelled to drive for different reasons, just like different riders will use the service for different reasons. I'm old enough that I remember when I first graduated from college, moved into the city. I had bought a car that I had scraped for and I was on a payment plan for. And I found myself more and more often not driving this car, dealing with the insurance costs, dealing with the gas and the maintenance costs. I had a couple of break ins, all the things, parking fees, all the things that you face, and realized over time that, between walking for me, mass transit, and starting to utilize services like Lyft, you can create that own freedom and flexibility for yourself. So, in the same way that riders might be driven to utilize the service for different reasons, I think drivers are drawn there for different reasons too. And I'm not an economist. I don't pretend to be. I can say whatever the economy ever brings, if it shifts the dynamic for our drivers, I'm glad that we're providing a service that can give them that flexibility for that time when they need it.
I have 2 stories for you. One is a rider story and one is a driver story. They're interesting anecdotes. You've probably heard 1,000 of them. But the first is a rider story. One of my very successful friends who has a business that is just gangbusters, a mother of 2, lives in Los Angeles. She doesn't have a car, and, she exclusively rides Lyfts. And the reason is because she can work on her way to and from meetings, and she can use that time to be on her phone and be more productive. And so she swears by not having a car in Los Angeles and just exclusively using Lyft, which is amazing. That's a writer story. Here's my driver
Love that.
story. One of the best Lyft driver stories I ever had was a Indian man. We started talking. He was bringing me to the airport, and we were like, "What's your story?" You know what? He is one of the highest level engineers at one of Silicon Valley's biggest technology companies. He probably makes like 30, 300, $400,000 a year in
Here.
his job, but his kid decided to go back to grad school and he wanted to pay for it. And he had a very regulated budget, so to speak. And he realized if I just do Lyft for 6 months on the weekends, I'll be able to pay in full for my kids' graduate school. So I'm just going to do this to create extra income so that we don't have to change our lifestyle. And I can also pay for this new expense. I thought it was such a great story. Like it's a very logical approach to raising extra capital to do this thing that you want to do for your family.
Oh, it sure is. It's fantastic. And it's really that when you think about the fact that prior to maybe somewhere around 2012, Lyft wasn't even part of our world. I mean, I think about when I grew up decades earlier, the idea that you would walk out in front of your home one day and a car would pull up, a car you've never seen before, a license plate you've never seen before, a driver you've never seen before, and you'd feel very confident that you're about to have a really positive experience by entering that car would have been anathema to the way I was raised and sort of our cultural mores at the time. Um, what rideshare has done to open up accessibility for transportation and accessibility for earnings is really just tremendous.
Yeah. Well, there are so many of those disruptor companies that all happened at once when we started
That's right.
realizing how we could think differently about, I mean, Airbnb, right? It was another one like, well, we're going to go to this person's house. We're just going to sleep
No
there for
question.
3 days. It was kind of all at the
Who
same
could have
time, right?
pictured that once upon a time? Yeah, no question.
Yeah. Okay. Have you read the book Careless People about Meta?
I have not. It sounds like maybe I should.
Yeah, you should. I
Okay.
just read it and it's so good. I'm disappointed you haven't read it because it is I don't know much about what it is to be a chief policy officer. So
Sure.
what I know is what I learned from reading the book Careless People. This was like a former Meta policy expert that came in and it was fascinating because she just describes this experience of dealing with a bunch of executives who are very smart from a business perspective, but probably had no idea how to deal with government affairs and, government entities generally and policy needing to be put in place in order for the company to proceed in its growth goals. and then managing all of these government people who don't know anything about technology people, and so there it was lots of interesting stories. You would probably like the book, but what was interesting to me is you're translating
Yeah.
languages for 2 groups of
Yes.
people who are very smart in their own right, but don't necessarily speak the same language, and how challenging that must be, and like, "No, no, no, don't say that. No, 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 you can't do that, and actually, no, that won't work at all," and who's more important, the government official or the CEO,
Yes.
that kind of was there was a lot of that in the book. It was kind of a hit piece on Meta, to be fair, but anyway, I learned a lot. Can you tell me about the translating element of your job and,
Here.
like, the intricacies that like, a typical executive our listeners are, CEOs and founders, people who are just executives that maybe don't, unless they're in the large organizations, don't have as much experience with the policy stuff.
Sure. Well, first, thanks for the book recommendation because I will follow up on that front. And second, yeah, like I actually think I would go as far as to say, because I once did a lot of government advocacy work in the finance realm. I actually think that technology and government couldn't be more different languages or cultures in a lot of ways. And so there really is a translation that has to take place. And there's a lot of danger on either side for misunderstanding the other. Like so much of
Right.
what I'm focused on to the external world day in and day out is ensuring that policymakers don't mistake their best intentions for best policy. That, like, technology in an ever evolving space, there's a lot of ways that your best intentions can potentially get it wrong. And so ensuring that you bring credibility every time, that means showing up in a way that is not partial truths, that is really sort of committed to the same aligned purpose of, fundamentally for a company like Lyft, we want to serve drivers, riders, communities that the elected officials want to serve too. They're constituents of them. And so as long as you find that alignment and can speak to that alignment, there's a pathway to getting there, but it does require some unfolding of better understanding the technology they're speaking to, the services they're speaking to, the why behind how things take place. On the flip side, really, really great point, that I think technology, and I'm talking bigger picture than my own company alone, can get frustrated at the pace of government or at the lack of understanding of their world that they experience from government. It doesn't make lawmakers, regulators, policymakers of all types any less important to the future of your work, though. And so you can sort of scream at the wind all you like to say that, like, they just don't understand and think that there's a way sort of around the policymaking world. But I think that usually ends up being a fool's errand. Like, finding a way to serve as number one, an educator, helps understand as a starting point. If they don't understand something about our space, maybe we have to take ownership of the fact that we need to do a better job of explaining it. We need to do a better job of articulating it and sort of meeting them where they are. Um, and that directionally, it goes both ways.
Well, yeah, so it's interesting. My book is called Surrender to Lead, and it's about the idea that so many leaders have attachments to the way that they think it should be. Whether that be their employees, they should be more proactive, or whether it be the board should be more understanding, or the consumer should be more, forward thinking, or, more understanding, or the product should be less buggy. And so you're talking about the concept of surrender, which is okay, government perhaps does move slower than technology companies do. And it is the way that it is. So let's stop fighting reality and kind of meet that moment where it is, instead of gripping tighter and wanting to control and be frustrated and spend all of our energy in the way that we wish that it was, that we think that it should be. Right. So you probably surrender a lot in your work.
But it's funny, you mentioned the two biggest ways. So you're talking really sort of technology and government. It even happens within any company that I've worked for. I'm surrounded all the time by people who are brilliant in ways that I'm not. And so in some ways, it's humbling to sort of recognize that and remind yourself of that. Um, Also, though, you owe it to your employer and to your company and to the purpose that you're trying to serve, to not feel intimidated by that you're bringing something different that complements those skills and complements those visions. And oftentimes, I do think some of it is connecting those dots and those strengths together and providing a little bit of a different context than they're used to hearing in the rooms that they're typically occupying. So the largely external nature of my role and the largely external nature of my team's role often puts us in a unique position to say, that thing that we're saying this way, here's how it's really landing. Or
Yeah,
that item that feels so obvious to us, here's what we're experiencing. It's not. And here's why we think that might be. And I think that's a service that people end up valuing.
I bet. Yeah. And another question I have is around as Lyft expands into Europe, what are you
Sure.
learning about the differences regionally in the work that you're doing?
Are so many differences, and I think it's really exciting for Lyft. First of all, so we've had wonderful, tremendous growth in the U.S. and Canada. Now we see that expanding worldwide, especially in Europe with the acquisition this past year of Free Now. I think the opportunities are endless, not only for Lyft, but for the addressable market we're seeking to serve is just enormous. And there are a lot of ways where I think um, the policymaker schematics, they're different, but there are also some fundamentals that are similar. I think fundamentally, you're looking at policymakers that um, aren't going to be driven by how something is affecting your company as much as how the thing that's affecting your company is affecting their constituents. So it's really the same translation that you're working to get to. And by the way, that cuts both ways. It requires you to be honest with yourself and with your own company about the health of the argument that you're making. Do we
Right.
stand by this top to bottom, start to finish? And what are the ways that we can continue to rise to meet the moment, to meet the services that are at stake here. So there are some similarities, there are some differences. The biggest difference I think we're going to face in Europe right now is just that the credibility we've earned day in and day out, year in and year out in the United States and in Canada, we are now earning elsewhere. Unfortunately, our colleagues from across the pond have already been doing a great job foundationally on that front.
Right. Okay. So you mentioned in your purview is government affairs and policy making and then social impact work. What is the
That's right.
social impact that you're focused on?
Sure. So Lift Up is a program that Lyft runs to try to rise to meet the needs of the communities we serve. So think of things like support for jobs access, support for grocery access, voting access, disaster relief. The philosophy behind it is take what you're already good at and apply it to the public good, to the social good. So, great example, we gave last year more than 7 million free or discounted rides through our Lift Up programs to help these kinds of things. The way we were able to show up with ride codes for the Alberta wildfires or the LA wildfires, the way we were able to help millions of people find their way to access the polls on election day. There are ways that Lyft, I think, tries to step up that says, um, what are the needs out there? And what's the fact that we are a sophisticated technology and transportation company? What's the way that that helps us meet those needs? I'll mention one other specific thing is that if you go into your Lyft app and you go down to your profile in the lower right corner, then you go to the left corner and click donate, you can find a feature called Round Up and Donate, which is a really special opportunity that's given to any Lyft rider to go in once, takes 20 seconds, look at 22 organizations, all of which are 501c3 nonprofits that are just doing service for the public good, that are more specialized in unique areas, whether it's health, education, civil liberties, you name it. And so that going forward, if you were to click that, and your ride fare costs you $9.80, it would round up that next 20 cents to that organization. You set it and forget it. And what we like to think, and forgive the cliche here, but I really do believe this is the best way to essentially speak to the essence of it. Your small change ultimately makes big change for these causes you believe in. And what I love about it, as someone who's leading our social impact work, is that it's another example of us just taking the thing that we're good at. We're facilitating rides, we're matching riders and drivers to get them where they need to go, and saying, someone else is better than us at these things. And if you want to find a seamless way to help them that won't feel painful to you, here's how.
That's great. I just watched this TEDx talk from someone who has an organization that's all about the act of giving is something that uplifts us as in our souls as individuals. It doesn't really matter how much you're giving or who you're giving to, but just the act of giving is something that boosts us up. And so his organization is all about give $1 a day, and every day we'll send you an email that reminds you you've given today and here's where your dollar went, and that alone will lift your spirits. So it feels like that you're just allowing people to be giving, to be involved in the act of giving, which in and of itself is going to make you feel better.
No question. I mean, I'm a big believer, by the way, personally, in what you just said. I try to be really proactive in my own life with the things that I know fundamentally have not only, I think, helped the people that I'm surrounding myself with, but intuitively have helped me as well. One of them you mentioned is just deliberately ensuring that you are bringing generosity to the spaces you occupy. Another one is just bringing gratitude, deliberate acts of gratitude, making sure that you are going out of your way to catch people around you doing something good, that you're acknowledging that. I do believe very fundamentally you are not only helping them by expressing that gratitude, but that you yourself need to be acknowledging the things that you're grateful for in your life each day. And it makes you a better leader. It makes you have clearer vision, higher energy. I'm a big believer in the whole ethos that surrounds it.
Yeah, our CEO starts every meeting with an act of gratitude where everyone says something that they're grateful for, or if it's something like an all hands where there's not enough time, he will have us take a moment to look at our phones and think of someone that we're grateful for and write them a message and tell them that we're grateful. And then he'll just pause the meeting for a minute and a half while he lets everyone do that because he says, it's really hard to be in a negative headspace when you're in a place of gratitude. The
I
2
love it.
things can't live together, you know?
Completely. I'm from a very large family, and both sides of my family, very large family, and also have just lived in a bunch of places and done a bunch of different things where different chapters of my lives have different friends that I've treasured. For a long time, I was lamenting how difficult it is to not only maintain those friendships in a very fundamental and real way, or those relationships in a meaningful way, but also how to even have the time capacity to invest. And I think sometimes we think too big. It's amazing when not very long ago, I discovered the power of that quick text to someone who pops into your mind that you haven't thought of in a while. How catching someone off guard with um, random colon just passed by such and such and thought of the time when yada yada happened between us. Hope you're well. Think of you often. Give my love to so and so. That small act that takes 30 seconds, it's amazing how much that can rejuvenate, in my own experience, a relationship. And is also something that sort of the passion behind that connection is something that actually really resonates within the corporate ethos at Lyft.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I love getting those messages. When I get those messages, my whole spirit
Yeah.
elevates for the rest of the day. So you could be the person giving that message. I mean, I'm gonna do that. Random, just past such and such. I like how you delivered that. Remembered when we yada yada. Give my
Yeah.
love to so and so. That's like the template right there.
And I think the bumper sticker in it is that you matter to me. I mean, that's fundamentally what you're saying. And I
Yeah,
think it feels good
exactly.
for them to read or hear, and it feels good for you to say and to acknowledge.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so beginning in 2026, what are you thinking about as you move forward into this next year? What concerns do you have? Challenges do you foresee? I mean, what are you going to be working on?
Yeah, thanks for that question. There's a host of things. I think mostly what my team is going to be focused on everywhere we operate is ensuring that we don't take anything for granted. What happens in the policymaker world is if you're not careful, you can get trapped into thinking, we've already done really good education on our top bunch of priorities. What's our new horizon look like? And there's always some of that. We're on the dawn of new novel technologies that are going to change the world in positive ways, and that's all very exciting. But I actually think that so much of what we can overlook if we're not careful is the policymaker and stakeholder community that my team is most focused on is constantly changing, is constantly distracted, is easily just swamped with a deluge of information from all sorts of sectors and statistical data and anecdotal data, whatever the case might be. So just ensuring that we are out there with the best positive message about what we can together achieve for the public good is a big priority for us. My team very much focuses our work on the two customers in every Lyft car. That's the driver who you really have to compel to say, this is a platform that you, in your role as a customer, you've decided, I choose you Lyft. This is where I'd like to drive and provide my services, which also involves us being able to match that need with the rider. If we don't have the supply of drivers or the demand of riders, we let the other side down. So they're really special opportunities for the company to ensure that we're focused on both at all times.
And so tell me about AI because that is the new dawn you're alluding to. How
Yeah.
is that complicating your life?
I think what I'm seeing mostly on the front end is that AI, and I'm speaking more in sort of micro ways on how I do work internally and that sorts of things. There are lots of just fantastic time saving capabilities. Difficult for me sometimes to differentiate between what we now call this new era of AI and algorithms that have been doing a lot of positive work for us for some time now. But I think ultimately the efficiencies we can get through AI in the service of each other and of our customers, and the organizational capacity it can provide us, always with human oversight, always with human engagement, is really positive. And the dawn of novel technologies in the rideshare space, whether that's autonomous vehicles or just improved safety technologies, anything that sort of takes us to the next level in serving the communities where we exist.
Are we really there? We're gonna do the autonomous yeah, Waymo exists already, right? Autonomous vehicle rideshare. That is so strange to think about, isn't it? I mean, 10 years ago, it was felt like such a sci-fi movie, and now we're here. I mean, so how will that affect Lyft? Because that's your driver community, right?
That's right. I mean, I think there's always a way. We look at right now just an enormous unaddressed market. Today, in any given city or town, we believe that more people are going to be finding more reasons and more opportunities to utilize rideshare over the long haul. So I don't look at it as some limited pie, which is once had drivers and now has AV capabilities. I think these are things that are going to complement each other over time. Lyft's view very much is that we're entering a hybrid world, not one that goes from drivered cars to driverless cars, but one that offers opportunities with both, and that could meet different needs. Um, we launched Lyft Silver this year, serving older Americans. Great example of something where I think there's a lot of positive that comes from having the right drivers work with older adults that might have different needs than other riders. At the same time, the supply won't always be there if at 4 in the morning you need to take a ride from one location to another. But an AV might be there, and there are ways that each of these things can complement each other over time. And I think what I'm excited about is just exploring how they can complement each other as we continue to grow the service we're providing.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you talk about silver what did you call them? The silver riders?
Lyft Silver, yeah, it's a program we unveiled earlier this year. The concept here, mostly what we found in my own experience, I'll just say, oftentimes it's adult children saying that my parent no longer driving themselves, but has special needs from other riders. They might want larger print in the app, might want the ability to talk to someone directly when they need to. I might like to pre-fund their account or have an ability of seeing where they are in the map when they're going to a medical appointment because I'm partly giving them care. It's more of an example of us constantly trying to iterate on how to better serve the needs of the communities where we exist.
I love that. I have to get that from my mom. My mom she drives a little moped around town and she got in an accident last year and she broke
Oh,
her
that's
hip or I don't even know if she broke her hip. She broke a series of bones. She also then happened to have a hip replacement shortly thereafter, but whatever. It was all related.
sure.
And so the moped has been in my garage for the last year because I've banned her from driving it. Just yesterday she came over for dinner and said, so I'm gonna have AAA come pick up the moped so I can repair it so I can get back on the road. I'm like, "Mom, no, you cannot. You're 79. There's no moped driving for you anymore. I gotta get her Lyft Silver."
Well, you know what's exciting about it, really, when you think about it, we all go through these stages of life. There are different curveballs that come at us, and as long as we're providing pathways that maintain independence, flexibility, mobility. It doesn't need to be that once I stop driving, I no longer get to the places I need to get to. We're in a world now where we can provide services to address those populations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I also think I've been in an autonomous rideshare before, and I'm a millennial. I'm supposed to be cool and with it, but I thought it was weird. I mean, I've given the choice. I did it for more like for an attraction ride,
Sure,
like
sure.
let's go to the festival and see what this ride's all about. But then, given the choice after having experienced it, I think I'll stick with Lyft for now anyway. I'm a change resistor. I'm not an early adopter when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah, I totally hear that. I think we're going to find all types. Your mind might change again. Others people might change in different directions. For us, I think we see all of these things as part of a long-term winning solution, not really at odds with each other.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Okay, well, I have one more question for you, which is my favorite question, which is what is something that you don't get asked about in these types of interviews that you wish you were asked more often?
I love questions like this. One thing maybe I'll say it this way. I wish I were asked more often about the people on my own team or in my own day-to-day orbit that I'm learning from. Oftentimes, I think the questions naturally come to you to say, you're in this position that's doing some exciting things, would like to learn more about how you're reshaping teams and how you're reshaping the world that you exist in. And I think most good leaders, certainly the only model that I know or that I abide by, is reciprocal learning. I love being surrounded by people that I can have real candor with, hopefully couched in kindness, but that you can cut to the chase and just say, Jerry, I need to challenge that last point you just made. Or Jerry, I know your intentions were great here, but that's not going to take us in the right direction. Here's why. Or Jerry, there's a gap in something you just said before that's going to affect that person on the other end of the hall. You might want to go have a conversation with them. And I think for me, maybe the best questions, my favorite questions, are being asked about the impact of those people on my life and on my own leadership.
Well, that's a wonderful response. It's one of my favorite responses I've had to that question. I
Oh,
love that.
fantastic.
Well, maybe I'll start asking that more often of the leaders who come on this podcast. So I appreciate that.
Thanks so much for the opportunity to be with you today. This has been great fun. I hope we can do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for coming. It has been such a pleasure, and we're so glad that you were here. If something in this conversation stuck with you, it may point to a real issue inside your organization. Maybe we can help. At Culture Partners, we help leaders drive results by activating your change. If you want to have a conversation about how to activate your change, schedule a consultation with our team.